So today we're talking about something different from the usual stuff. We'll start from this article here. FOSS infrastructure is under attack by AI companies. LLM scrapers are taking down FOSS project's infrastructure and it's getting worse. So this article came out on the libre.news last month, March 20th of 2025. What's going on is that AI companies are scraping websites, especially gitea, those kinds of websites, forgejo, those instances. And in this article is described in detail what's going on and what are the consequences and how to deal with these scrapers. And there are experiences from lots of users and system administrators. And I'm telling you this because this happened to me as well, and I had to put some mitigations in place. And if you see here, it happened also on forgejo, on Codeberg, yeah. And the problem with these crawlers is that they are much more aggressive than normal crawlers. They are using residential IPs. And usually each IP is associated with one request only, so it's no use in banning the IP because then it's not being recycled. They use thousands of different IPs in a few minutes, so that's very hard to track down and to mitigate. And as I said, this happened also to Codeberg, code.forgejo.org. It happened to me as well, and in fact my internet went down regularly during a time range of a few weeks until I figured out what the problem was because it wasn't really clear. I added a comment here on this discussion, so let's read it. I had a similar experience which was really a pain to mitigate. Yeah, as I said, I had a gitea instance. So of course it was self-hosted. I had lots of public mirrors, which means lots of pages because each repository has a certain number of commits and each commit has a page associated to it. So the scrapers were going through each commit, so that was very expensive in terms of bandwidth and of disk usage, but especially in terms of bandwidth. And here this is very important. The attack lasts about a minute, and in my case it was like 7,000 different IPs at the same time. This was going on regularly. Here my router it was a Fritzbox, it was the ISP's router, and what happened was that once all these connections were coming in, the router could not handle them and it rebooted. So was quite annoying. And most, this is important because most of these IPs come from mainland China, but they also use Alibaba cloud servers around the world, for example in the US. They target not just the commits, but also the issues page of each repository, also the RSS feed, practically all those pages. Fail to ban is ineffective, as I said, because they just use one IP for each request. Then they changed, once I banned all IPs from China, Hong Kong, etc., I got the same type of request from Brazil, Mexico, and other places. So it was really hard to come by. So the first mitigation I did was to use an OpenWRT router, which was a little bit better than the stock Fritzbox. It could handle more connections, but then the last solution was to use a dedicated computer, those N100 mini PCs, these ones. Yeah, those mini PCs, as long as it has more than 2 Ethernet ports, then you can use them as a router. Then I blacklisted most of the countries and just kept a few of them. I enabled IP reputation. Of course, I had all my firewall set up, and I changed. I had to change the subdomain of gitea because the attack was still in place. I think it's still there if I re-enable the old domain, because now the old domain goes to a black hole, to a DNS black hole, so it doesn't get redirected to my IP. Otherwise, the attack might be still there. And if you see here, this is a screenshot of OpenWRT during an attack. On the y-axis there are the total number of connections, and on the x-axis the 3-minute interval window. This is crazy because it's not normal that they do like this, because in this case 4,000 connections at the same time is not something normal. yeah, if you continue reading, there is one of the possible mitigations is to use this software called Anubis, which uses a proof of work algorithm. You can see it here. And I'm not an expert in how it works in the background, but it seems to be working. At least in my case, it seems to block the bots quite well for the moment. Yeah, I think you can find it on GitHub. Yeah, okay. Here's the description. Anubis weighs the soul of your connection using a SHA 256 proof of work challenge in order to protect upstream resources from scraper bots. And how it works is that you, along with your gitea or forgejo service here, this is a Docker compose file, you add Anubis and you expose Anubis to the internet, and then Anubis connects to forgejo. Here there is the target variable. If you see here, HTTP forgejo 3000. So it goes here to this service, and it is like another firewall, right? So you define your Anubis rules in a separate file like this. Maybe you allow some bots for the search engines, and then all the rest of the requests get served the challenge. And if you have a normal browser, it works. Otherwise, if it's a bot, apparently it doesn't. So you also need to change your reverse proxy configuration like this. This is for Apache. Okay, so after the Apache reverse proxy configuration, you also need to remember to add Git and Git LFS user agents in the whitelist. Otherwise, when you clone or push a repository with HTTP, especially, it's not going to work. So this is important, and this needs to be added to the rules here. Okay. This is another page still on the forgejo discussions. Crawlers hitting forgejo instances, global abuse trend. Here there is a list of other free software projects affected by this problem. There is a ton of them here. There's just mitigations, there's no real solution. So this is a very important and big problem that needs to be solved. If you're affected by this problem, let me know in the comments. And if you consider creating a gitea or forgejo or another Git instance, consider adding Anubis as mitigation, because at the moment this is the only way, one of the ways to mitigate this problem, unless you want to use non-self-hosted solutions such as Cloudflare. Yeah, if you want everything all self-hosted, you need a solution like this. Otherwise, you need to block entire countries, which is not really useful. Okay, so if you like the video, put a thumbs up and subscribe. And as always, bye bye.